Hello everyone, and welcome to the Deepbluerenegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deepbluerenegade, and I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 412. Today is Saturday, May 14th, 2022, and I'm glad you could join me today. It is a beautiful day, so that is exciting. Got our walk in. Eventually, we will go grocery shopping. But first, the podcast. We have accumulated enough things that I have to go to the normal grocery store that I drive to instead of the closed grocery store that I can walk to. Because, I know, I might be able to find shaving cream there, but I don't think I want to pay for it there. So, no worries there. And what would it be? This week has been, at the very least, a little bit hilarious. Whatever. Mostly it's just one story, so it's fine. So, first things first, let us talk about the Scheherazade. So this is Scheherazade, a Anna Victoria pattern that I am knitting out of Yarn Place Gentle, which is a cobweb weight yarn that I have dyed a couple of times in the attempt to make it very, ever improving. So what I have going on right now is that I'm actually into the 8th pattern repeat. I'm actually to the point where I would need to put in beads, and that was apparently not a priority last night. Or would it be, or it's sort of be the case where this project goes sort of in spurts. So I'll put in the time to put in the bead row, and then I'll rush through the rows without beads, and then I'll need to set aside another night to put in a bead row. So it's slow and steady, but it's now looking to be a much more substantial size. In good news, now that I'm sort of in the throes of this project, it'd be the case where it'd be the case where my yarn usage is a little bit higher than it was at the beginning of the project. So that means, as it stands right now, I don't need to do 16 repeats of the body chart. I'm now, I think, down to 14, I think. So as I'm getting further and further along, it's becoming a little bit less ridiculous. But now, would it be? It's definitely not big enough yet. But at the very least now we're talking a much more substantial shawl. And let's see if I can't get the points centered up a little bit better so that you can see the gradient very nicely today. So that's cool. So I did 2 rounds of cake dyeing with blue to create this ombre effect. So as it stands right now, out of the 84 grams I started with, I can perfectly use the yarn in 77, so that's not too terrible. But we'll figure out what's going on there. So slow but steady progress, but I was just very excited to know that I didn't have to do the full crazy number of repeats. And at this point, I'm halfway through. I don't know. On one hand, I look at the tubes of beads. I'm okay, I've not used a whole lot when you think that this one isn't totally full. But I did have a decent amount of waste. And I don't even know that all my waste is in here, but that's not. These were all the beads that didn't fit, and so I'll just keep dumping all the beads that don't fit in there. So we'll see. Hopefully it's not going to be something silly where I just need to buy like one more tube in order to make it work, but I haven't yet sat down and done all of the math to figure out how many more beads I will need. Oh well. So, moving along nicely. As far as the whole scheme of like whatever food coloring dyed yarn is concerned, I've had much better luck with greens and blues than the pinks. So what would it be? This is dyed yarn that actually looks right on camera, so that's lovely. Let's see. The next thing is my Water Bear sweater, which is a Jacqueline Cieselak pattern. And I am still, I don't know, I feel like I'm almost done with the second sleeve. I was like, yeah. I still probably have 9 inches to a foot of sleeve to go, but it's not a lot of, the rounds are fast. And because this is a little bit less of a mystery, it was sort of the case where with the other sleeve it was like knit for a while, try it on, for a while, try it on, and now it would be the case where like, okay, knit until it is the same length. Done. Pay attention to when you need to do a decrease. Okay. And the time when it comes to do the decrease seems to come around fairly quickly. But what would it be? It'd be the case where worked through getting everything all picked up, got all the short rows done, and that must have been this week, because I think it was the case where I was sort of beginning to do it, maybe? Or would it be, I think I'd picked it all up last week. So I managed to get all the numbers right, get the sleeve cap all knit, proceed working in the round, and this is how much work in the round I managed to do. So, it's not too shabby. And I think I have been pretty on point in terms of how many rows until I've needed to do a decrease, so it's just going to keep going a little bit faster as I go down. And then in exciting news, when I finish this sleeve, then I'll be able to resume working in the round again. So, or no, that's not true. I'm working in the round right now. I'll be able to resume the body. And what would it be? I think what I'm going to end up doing, because I realized I didn't do a ball weigh-in before I started, is I will, conveniently I have 2 of the same cord on here, so I'm going to get it all onto one cord, or we get it all on one cord, tear out the other cord, weigh the sweater that I have knit so far, weigh the other balls of yarn, and then I'll have a better idea about where I've started at. I don't know why I think I've done this a couple of times where I've forgotten to quantify my yarn before beginning. Alas. So there's still time to do it, because the dealio is I wouldn't be able to just stick my full sweater onto my scale, because my scale has a 400 gram limit, and this is going to take 5 balls of yarn. So it's definitely going to be more than it can handle, and if I have a little tear tray on it, it's definitely going to be more than it can handle, because my little, like my tear is, I don't know, some amount of my headroom for my scale anyways. So it's a little bit challenging when I have like a 5 ball sweater. It's like, oh, right, okay. So I can do the check in this in between time. So I should do that when I'm done with the sleeve. But I don't have like a spare tiny circ, so it's worth doing the weigh-in. It's worth doing the weigh-in a little bit later. And I'll have to get it onto one needle anyways, because right now I just stuck the needles on so I could try it on more easily, because one needle was not enough to go around. So it needs to happen. And whatever, and that's just going to be the case where that'll give me a better idea about what's going on, what needs to happen, does anything need to change. Maybe not necessarily, well, I could sort of slightly back out about like how much yarn the sleeves ended up taking. I'm realizing that it's like a little bit different. And what was that? I think this was a discussion that I ended up having with one of my knitting friends, which was if you're talking yokes and raglans, your sweater proportions work out to be like 1/3 to arm separation, 1/3 for the body, and then 1/6 for each of the sleeves. But if we're talking a set-in sleeve shoulder, that means that this part is now a part of the sleeve. So that probably means you're closer to 20% yarn usage for that instead. And conveniently, a 5-skein sweater would imply that if I'd used 20% of my yarn for the sleeve, I've definitely used less than that. So it could be the case where I don't even need to use every last little bit of the remaining yarn. Oh, I might anyways. But that proportionally, it'll be the case where, yeah. So it'll be the case where it's more like 20% for the yoke, 20% for each sleeve, and then the, what? The math doesn't entirely work right now. It just means the proportions are a little bit different. You're stealing from one to make the other one work. And I do like the way the set-in sleeve fits, so there's that. And actually, I think we're far enough along on this that I can just pop this on. If the needle comes a little bit loose, we can deal with the consequences. So. Yeah, it's just a little bit, the 9-inch is a little bit tight for there. So we definitely have a good sleeve length here. Make sure that it's all the way onto my arm. So, and it will loosen up a little bit in the blocking, but for now, these are fairly close-fitting sleeves, and that's not like it's the end of the world. And then we have the shawl collar coming around. The way the point is working, it actually ends up going pretty high up the back of my neck. We're getting good closure. There's more room that's coming in for whatever. I will be able, I think, to get to the full stitch count that I want before we come to the full chest measurement, but it is fitting pretty nice. Would it be? It looks good. I'm totally blending into the chair though. So would it be? So I'm past the elbow now, but I definitely have quite a bit more sweater to knit before it's there. It was like one hand to go. So that's maybe not quite as bad as I was estimating. So it should be good. And then there's no closure, so I don't need to mess around with that, but it will sit nicely and lie the way it's supposed to, and even if it does end up being more open, like brioche looks good on both sides. So it's very exciting. This has received most of the love this week. Would it be? It would. I'll have to laugh a little bit because there's no way the sweater is going to be. No way the sweater is going to be done. During the time when it needed to be. Well, that's not entirely true. It's more, if I wanted to knit a cardigan for what's outside, there's only 2 weeks remaining of leave, so I don't think I'm gonna finish the sweater in 2 weeks. Like, definitely going to be fairly far along. Like, I can probably pretty safely say I'm to the 50% mark now. I'm just like trying to do the mental map in my head for where I'm at. Nice. It's a little bit warm today for this. Because it is a beautiful sunny day. It is closer to 75 inside than 70, so. Sorry, I'm just being silly. But it's coming along. I'm excited. I don't know whether or not, or I'm pretty sure I haven't done the open front cardigan with set-in sleeves, but I am excited about it because it does seem like everything's going to stay in place nicely, and a little bit of extra work up in the shoulder, a little bit of extra work, a little bit of extra yarn slices, but it's going to be a really nice sweater when it's done. And what would it be? It'd be the case where it will go with lots of things in my wardrobe. It's blue, but like a nice neutral navy sort of blue. And like it looks fairly fancy in the grand scheme of things, so that brioche really classes it up. So should be good. And then here's sort of the back and shawl collar, so the brioche-alicious section of it. So should be good. But yeah, so that was most of my knitting this week, was a decent chunk of a sleeve. And we'll see. We'll see if whatever. It seems pretty good that I'll be able to finish the sleeve and get back on the body, and that'll be nice. It was a pleasant break. So, and it actually has been, I would say, a pretty good week for spinning as well. What would it be? I ended up, I think I was just a little bit more mindful about trying to get more than one ball per fiber done this week. so I don't know whether or not this is 2.5 or 1.5 balls. I think it might be closer to the 2.5 ball range. Like, it definitely looks a little bit more substantial there. So this is, and of course I stopped it in a weird place because I was working on it last night right before going to bed. So this is a combination of Hobbledehoy Batlings in the Gamba color and Blurple Merino Angora from Bungalow Acres Farm. Bungalow Angoras, there we go. And I blended it on my drum carder. I dyed the Merino Angora Blurple. I will be filled with regret about that. Whatever, such is life. I'm really loving the complexity of color that I'm getting with the grays and the blurple. It was a good mix, but the problem with the blurple is that the color will fade in the sunshine. So that's less than ideal, but whatever. Like what it boils down to is I shouldn't buy wilted violet for dyeing purposes. Like, it's really convenient, but I should only buy like blue Wiltons if I want to do something. So this is coming along nicely. So this is this is in the midst of the 3rd ounce of the project, or this is the 3rd ounce of this one. There's 4 ounces total of this color, and I'm going to be applying it together with the blue leaning ones and making a 4-ply, because I think that'll make a nice thickness of yarn. And if things go terribly wrong, then I'll have a mini skein of the leftovers. So, but what ended up happening was the silver ends up contrasting a little bit better with the purple. So I do actually like the way that turned out. It turned out pretty cool. So I'm just trying to be a little bit more mindful and keeping the ball rolling on this project, because I would like to have a chance to work on different things. And it just seems like there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of good colors in this one. I grabbed a pretty big ball out of my bag for this one. So there's some pretty good teals. Or the teal is like silk, I think. So I just have to keep that moving forward. But like, the bag is definitely getting smaller. So I don't know if it'll be the case where I just spin what I can on it and then reserve the last 9 balls for the final cop that I end up making. We shall see. But it has been fun to just sort of reach into the bag and grab. Oh, it seems like there's going to be a lot of teals in this one, which is fine. Like, this one has like teals and greens in it, so not too shabby. And this one has maybe, it's more silvery with like little hints of pink. So it's definitely coming along. And then I have my second bobbin here, and honestly it seems like I might end up finishing this faster. I don't know if I manage to spin a little bit more on it or what, but I did get the second bobbin started this week, so just a little bit. There's a lot more add-ins in this one, and and you definitely can't see the blurple as well, but whatever. It's fine. So I've done 3 balls here. I can't remember if that was consistent or not. There's not too many more to go. When I look at this bag, it's definitely fairly hollowed out as well. Oops. Having stuff come out. So let's move it along. And would it may just be the case where I start getting a little bit more cavalier about it. Which boils down to would it may be the case where I do braid pretty soon and decide to finish the rest on the wheel because I just want it over. I alternate. But I think part of this is like making sure that I'm taking care of everything that needs to be done. And so it seems like one of those things is getting a bunch of singles spun up before whatever, at the end of May. I will not have as many singles saved up. So, let's see. There have been a couple of stash positions this week. Interestingly enough, I ended up tagging Three Waters Farm in my socks, and I ended up winning Marianne's drawing for like a coupon for her shop. So, or whatever, because if I'm using the fiber, I tend to tag the dyer behind it. So that was cool. And the spring sale was going on at the same time, but I couldn't combine discount codes, so it was probably all a wash anyways, but ended up picking up 2 braids of fiber from Three Waters Farm. So this one is a cluster of grapes in the BFL. So there's a little bit more of a rainbow, and basically this is a very lovely blue, and then with some rainbowy bits in it too, so should be fun. So there's like a little bit of orange, maroon, and green, but it is primarily blue. And then the other one that I picked up was red plaid and denim, and this one, it actually looks like it coordinates very well with the yarn that I spun for the hinterland, so maybe there's an opportunity to use these guys together. So, but this one is reds and blues, but it's definitely sort of more of the gray leaning blue, and where the reds and blues collide, there's a lovely purple. So it should be interesting to spin up. And this one is merino silk, so this is an 80/20 merino silk because I'm fancy with that. And it's actually very interesting to look and see how the dye is taken differently. It seems like the blue the silk took the blue better than the red. So the red is looking a little bit more pale, but then there seems to be larger sort of they're like streaks of blue in the silk, which is cool. Oh, make sure. Wiggle. Okay. So that was pretty cool. And then the other thing was I went to, so there is a local fabric and notion store that's on the same street as Firebird Yarns. So I ended up going on an adventure there, and I picked up button thread. So button thread is just a little bit, button thread is just a little bit thicker. And this one is apparently 75% polyester, 25% cotton, for sewing in the zippers. So another thing that I would really like to get over with in the next 2 weeks. But then what was funny about it was there were all sorts. I had no clue what I was. I had no clue what was in the store. I didn't even know it existed. But it was definitely the most walkable fabric store. So I don't know. I ended up walking like 6.5 miles that day. It was the closest one to where I was currently at. But there was all sorts of interesting things there. So it's on Haight Street, and so that is like the epicenter of San Francisco hippie. So there was a lot. There was reactive dyes and acid dyes, fabric, thread, straight up tie-dye kits, painting supplies. It had a little bit of a lot of things, and I ended up towards the front of the store. There was actually needle felting equipment, and what was even more crazy than that was their special wool for needle felting actually came from my hometown. So it was very surprising to see packages of wool from Grand Haven, Michigan, and a store on Haight Street in San Francisco. But I didn't end up picking up any of the wool because I've got plenty of wool here. But I did end up picking up a needle felting mat and a needle felting tool. And so I ended up getting the more complicated one. I ended up getting the more complicated one because I could choose how many needles were in there, and the intention is actually to do needle felting for steeking. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm here, and I could pick up this thing, and I don't need to order it online. I can just get it locally. So I figured that was good. So so basically what it boils down to is you lay the thing you want to felt on there and then you violently stab it, and that ends up felting it together. And I can do 1, 2, or 3 needles with this particular tool. And so seemed like it was going to do a good job. Oops. So I went in for button thread and then left with everything I needed to needle felt. What was it? There have been some very interesting, oh, now I'm forgetting her name, but the creator behind Gel Bee, I follow her personal account, and on her personal account she's been doing needle felted pet portraits. Very, very, very entertaining to look at, and like surprisingly photorealistic. And it just blew my mind a little bit that you could get photorealistic pet portraits with felt. But so I don't think it's going to end up being a full-on hobby, but it'd be the case where my thought process is I don't have a sewing machine. I want to have some way of securing steeks. This is going to be a good way of doing that. I can anticipate many steeks in my future because I do love a good colorwork yoke. So should be fun. And then the heredity. So that was like story number 2 from the week. Story number 3 from the week. So I walk around my neighborhood wearing VPN, and what that generally means is that I also get to knit at the same time because my carrying thing leaves me hands-free. So, would it be? And it's been the case where generally I get to talk with everyone who walks dogs, and everyone who's doing something with their plants in front of their house, and what would it be? Generally, it's just slightly hilarious, like construction workers, whoever's out and about. We haven't run into the catwalker, but there is definitely someone who walks the cat in the neighborhood. And so it was the case where one of my neighbors on the same street as me thought that it was like so industrious that I was like having the baby nap and knitting at the same time. And so she ended up coming out yesterday, and she was holding something, and it was like a little bit unclear, like it looks maybe like some sort of root ball or whatever, but it turned out that she was on the lookout for when I was going to be walking by. It turns out that her mom used to knit. She isn't knitting now, and I think she's been finding ways to offload the stash because she doesn't knit herself. And so she ended up handing me this skein of handspun. So this is from Zappy Zapped Handspun. I do not know whether or not she's still active. This one was spun in 2011. So it's been hanging out in the stash for a while. And there appear to be 2 different tags on it. So it's 2.3 ounces, 3-ply, 100 yards. So like on somewhere between that worsted to Aaron sort of weight. And as soon as it got close enough, it was like, oh my gosh, that's handspun. I know exactly what that is. And she's like, whatever. And so as we were walking away, it was the case. It's like, she knew it was handspun. It's like, I didn't mention to her that day there were at least 3 handspun items upon me. It's like my sweater, my hat, and his. So, what did we? So I forgot to ask if she would like something made with it, because what it be? It's definitely oh, words are escaping me. It's like some of this sort of. Some of this looks like 2-ply for some reason. Parts of it are definitely 3-ply though, so I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe there's more than one there? I don't know. Interesting. So, it's like, whatever. I'm apparently manifesting handspun in my life. But as far as like offloaded stash is concerned, I think that is the nicest offloaded stash I've ever received. I was not expecting. Oh, and it's merino. So nice stuff. But I just had to laugh because it was like, oh, I know that you knit because you see you knitting, and I don't think she realized that I spun, but whatever. There's only so much that you can expect of people who don't. So it's pretty cool. So, decent number of things entered my life. Have I been working on the same spinning projects for quite some time? Yes. It'll be fun. We're working through the old stash. Probably means, I already know what my next project's going to be. It's going to be the hat. So, or maybe I need to get working on it because it's almost the cold season in San Francisco. I know, it's pretty toasty. you're heading towards the cold foggy times when inland gets to be super duper hot and all the cold ocean air comes across. So I will want my toasty sweaters soon for June. Let's see. Yeah, no, just I think the other thing going on has just been trying to tick off all of the things I need before I do my slow return to work. Luckily, it's not all the way in all at once. We're starting slow. But yeah, it's sort of like, so, not too crazy there, but that's what I'm thinking about. We get to have like a whole month of thinking about it. Probably shouldn't take up that much brain space. Oh well. But yeah, so I feel like I'm working through my list. Feel like I'm making good progress on my projects. Maybe not as impressive of progress as one would expect, but taking care of a little baby is a lot of work, so. So, that's the story there. Now there's really no excuse for me not to go to the grocery store. So, with that, I hope you guys have a lovely week, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week. So, take care, guys. Bye-bye.